Okay, welcome everybody. It's the Wednesday edition of Talkback, and it's time to talk some politicking.
Yeah, that's right. We've got political science on the radio today. We have University of Montana professor Robert Saldin in the studio. Thanks for coming in.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And today is our political science on the radio domestic politics edition. I don't know, maybe we'll throw Canada in there too, because that's kind of interesting. But kind of focusing on stuff in the United States. Robert, you've done a lot of work. I noticed you've been at a Harvard Institute for a while. You've done work back east as well with other institutes. So tell us a little bit about your background and why you do politics.
Yeah, I've studied politics in the United States, and I've always just been drawn to it from as long as I can remember. I can remember the 1988 campaign, which is the first one I can remember. I'm 38 years old. That's the first one I can remember, and remember in particular always liking to watch Michael Dukakis, because at the end of Michael Dukakis' speeches, they always played his campaign theme song, which was Neil Diamond's America, which was a hit at the time, and one that I really liked at the time.
As he was driving around in the tank, right?
yeah, exactly, right. After the tank, and a lot of incredible moments from that campaign. But so kind of ever since then, I've just been interested in American politics, and have had the good fortune to wind up here at the University of Montana, being able to teach and write about that.
You're a Northwest boy, right?
That's right. Yeah, grew up in Boise, Idaho. Family, long family roots here in Missoula, up on the High Line. Family homestead is up there, just east of Shelby. My grandmother is a UM grad, so Dad grew up here in town, Missoula County High, and so this was an opportunity to come home for me.
All right. Well, thanks so much for coming on to the show. I'm sure we'll have discussions later. Maybe they'll be nice and easy. Maybe they'll be difficult. I never know. It's a box of chocolates on Talkback. You never know what you're going to get into. But Robert is open to talk about pretty much anything in politics, as are Peter and I. So give us a call at 721-1290. To get things started, Peter, I wanted to play a clip.
Okay.
So the clip is called Enemies, ? It's in our little lineup.
Okay.
And it's a selection of statements from three candidates. The first is one that might be familiar. It's from Hillary Clinton at the debate. The second statement is from Jim Webb when he retired from the Democratic primary campaign. And the third is from Joe Biden, surprisingly, in an interview he gave. And all of them have to do about who your enemies really are.
Okay, so here we go.
You've all made a few people upset over your political careers. Which enemy are you most proud of?
In addition to the NRA, the health insurance companies, the drug companies, the Iranians, probably the Republicans.
Americans are disgusted by all this talk of Republicans and Democrats calling each other the enemy, instead of reaching out across the table and actually finding ways to work together. I know what an enemy really is from hard personal combat. The other party's not the enemy, they're the opposition. In our democracy, we're lucky to have an opposition in order to have honest debate. It's creative, it's healthy. There's no opposition party in countries like China because there are no elections in China or in other non-democratic authoritarian societies.
All of my years, like you, Fritz, served in the United States Senate and the House. If you notice, whenever there's as Amy's here, she can tell you, whenever there's a problem, I get sent to the Hill. Which, by the way, is a useful use of my time, because I really respect the members up there, and I still have a lot of Republican friends. I don't think my chief enemy is the Republican Party. This is a matter of making things work.
There you go. Okay.
All right. Well,
Gotcha.
I guess I wanted to set that up to kind of ask Robert a question. And the question is, in American politics, a lot of people feel that we're greater enemies across the political divide than ever before, that we've become more divided and entrenched in our various positions, and there's no recovering from this entrenchment. And then I read stuff from history about duels over issues and people dying at the Senate. So I guess my question for you is, Are we treating each other in America more like enemies than at any time in the past, or is this something new or something old,
Or is it a cycle?
Well, I think a couple things are true. One thing that's true is that we are polarized as a country, and we see this probably more clearly back in Washington than here in Missoula, Montana. But I think we see it. We see it here in town. We see it everywhere. We are right now a polarized country, and to some degree, this is unusual. We haven't. If you look over the last several decades, it's we've had growing polarization. That is, people on the left and right, they're farther apart. Republicans and Democrats are farther apart. They don't interact with one another. And this is not just a Washington thing, although it certainly is true in Washington. Republicans and Democrats don't hang out like they used to. But we also see it just in the lives of everyday citizens. We tend to self-segregate into groups with people who are like ourselves.
Now, what does that self-segregation look like? In the past, I think it was harder to self-segregate. It was harder to travel. It was harder to get a job in a different location. And I mean, now, one of the things I thought was really interesting when I moved to Japan is that most Japanese people, at least when I was working over there, would have maybe 3 jobs in their life. And the average job number for an American was something like 9 or 12 or 14. It was way high. And I was like, well, why don't you guys move? And then job security was the big mantra. Well, here we move all the time. We're changing, shifting alliances and allegiances all the time. Why doesn't that happen with politics?
Well, I think it does to some degree happen with politics. We are a mobile society. We get to choose where we live. A lot of times that is based on going where the job is. But people also, I mean, there's no better example of this than Western Montana. A lot of people are here because they want to be here. And we see this going on in neighborhood selection and all kinds of different things. And there is a lot of evidence out there to suggest that this is new. And so the polarization piece is absolutely there. But I also wanted to go back to what you were talking about in the lead up to this. So, some of the history. I think we should also be careful not to get too bent out of shape over how terrible things are. If you look back in history, we've been through this before in much worse situations. I mean, there was, after all, a civil war. There was. I'm not sure there's ever been an actual death in Congress on the floor of the House or Senate, but there was.
There's a couple of bloody noses.
Duels outside.
Oh, duels outside. Right. Yeah. You know, Alexander Hamilton was shot in a duel. There was also a famous caning. A South Carolina member of the House walked across the Capitol and caned Charles Sumner nearly to death. He survived, but he was never quite the same, right? So, I mean, you want to talk about polarization. Let's go back to the 1850s.
We're going to take a break. But every 10 minutes, we'll take a break. We have all 3 lines open. This is going to be a freewheeling discussion. We're also expecting a call from Bob Seidenschwartz here in the next few minutes. We have all 3 lines open and our Facebook page. So if you have a comment or a question, give us a call.
Also, stay tuned because I'll be giving away free beer today.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're going to come right back right after this. Okay, we're back on Talkback, talking politics. 721-1290 is our number. That's John King. I'm Peter Christian. Political science professor Robert Saldin joining us from the University of Montana, and it's good to have you here, sir. We have a caller?
That's right. We've got
right to it.
Jim on the line.
Jim, good morning. You're on Talkback, sir. What's up?
Hi, good morning. I just thought I'd mention a little corollary. In the 1850s, we had an extreme polarization going on between, obviously, the slavery and the anti-slavery people and adding new states. And there was such an extreme amount of vitriol because the country was going to go one way or the other in an extreme direction, and everybody knew it was hanging on the edge. We have the same thing today. We have, on one side, we have the Democrats trying to outdo each other to see who can be the best Santa Claus and give people free stuff. And on the other side, you have the Republicans saying, hey, we're $18 trillion in debt. Who's going to pay for it? We're bankrupt. And so you have an extremism because the country is going to go one way or the other, and it will never be the same, whichever way it goes. And I truly believe that's the corollary between the extremism now and the extremism of the positions that they took in the 1850s.
Well, Jim, hang on. I want to ask Robert something. Now, Jim just brought up 2 polar opposites, okay? One, the Democrats want to be Santa Claus, give everything away. On the other side, the Republicans are saying we're $19 trillion in debt, we're bankrupt. So is the actual truth somewhere in the middle there, or is he being accurate in his statement?
Yeah, thanks for the call, Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
I think that call from Jim, it's a great example of the way in which we are really polarized in this country. I think a lot of people feel exactly the way Jim does. That it's that the stakes are very high, and that the two parties are really at polar ends of the spectrum. And I think to some degree, there's a case to be made for that. I would remind listeners, though, that one of the unique things about the American political system is that we have a two-party system as opposed to a multi-party system. In a two-party system, you tend to see the two parties be a little bit more centrist in their orientation, and that is still a feature. It's easy to get wrapped up in some of these things, the news of the day, and forget that in other countries, the prominent parties are much farther spread out on the political spectrum. So, I think a lot of Republicans would agree with Jim. Democrats are, want to be Santa Claus, give people free stuff, and in kind of reckless fashion, not pay for it. Republicans,
or just worry about it later.
Sure, yeah, worry about it later. I think Jim does tap into something. That there is at some point a concern with that. You can't just constantly be creating new benefits for people without paying for them. And I think over the course of American history, usually when we've done these things, it's there has been a concern about paying for them. But one of the things we see right now, and I think this is maybe what Jim was getting at, is that looking towards the future of some of these big programs, the entitlement programs, there are really legitimate concerns.
But aren't there in every presidential election? Isn't one of the points that comes out is we're on a tipping point here? I mean, whether it's 1964 or whether it's 2014 or 2016, we're on a tipping point. We're on are we really on a tipping point? Or, for instance, if Hillary Clinton does win, which I believe she will.
That's right. We've got to bet on this.
Yeah, or if let's go the other way. Let's say Donald Trump becomes president, el jefe. Okay?
Two dark futures for me. Two very dark futures.
So will there be? Is that a tipping point that will send us into the abyss one way or the other?
I think no, absolutely not. Look, one of the things we see in every single presidential election cycle, people say, "Oh, this is the most important presidential election of our lifetime." Right? Every single time, you can just absolutely count on that. It's ridiculous. It's a little overinflated. Not every single presidential election can be the most important one. So I think we tend to get wrapped up in this. Obviously, it's to the advantage of partisans and people running for president to say that this is the most important election.
Because you want to get people out to the polls.
Absolutely, gets people fired up. And obviously, presidential elections are really important. But I think generally a little perspective is in order, and we can look to history and for some of that. And I think when we do, it should make us take a little bit of a step back and feel a little bit less hysterical about where we are, and a little bit more comfortable that do we have big problems? Sure, but we've always had big problems, and I think the problems that we have now, actually compared to what we've gone through in history, are relatively mild.
Yeah, and we have some domestic issues, but the giant external threats are pretty much out in the back picture. I did want to ask you, though, what your answer is to the question of why the divide. You basically made the case that it's almost unprecedented. I mean, it's not as bad as going to sabers or anything, but it's a pretty different situation that we're living in now. And my question to you is why? I didn't get that you agreed fully with Jim on the reasons behind it. So what do you think is the answer?
Well, I think part of this is just human nature, right? People in their nature tend to group together with like-minded people, right? This has gone on forever. And so to one degree, we should never expect that we can ever get beyond this. I mean, partisanship is a very natural and normal thing. We see it all the time outside of the political realm too. So it's always going to be there, I think. Now, why is it maybe more intense now than it has been in recent decades? Well, we see changes in the media culture, right? People point to that. I think, like we were talking about earlier, there's more mobility, so people can choose where they live now in a way that hasn't always been as easy. I mean, those are two of the things you hear. I mean, you also hear about the whole Washington argument that it all stems from Washington, that the people kind of take their cues from the elites. And it's certainly true that Washington has become more polarized, lots of potential reasons for that. One of them I mentioned kind of briefly earlier, Republicans and Democrats don't hang out. It used to be, and this again goes to some technological changes. It's so easy now to get back to your districts. So most members of Congress on the weekend they fly home, and that's true of our people even here in Montana, way on the other side of the country. It used to be that these people used to hang out in Washington a lot more, so they'd go on the cocktail party circuit and say what you will about that, but it did put these people into contact. Now it's very easy for Democratic members to actually hardly know any of the Republicans across the aisle.
Okay, we're up against a break. 721-1290 is our number. 1-800-568-5309, or you can make your comment on our Facebook page. We're coming right back. Hey, we're back on Talkback, 721-1290. Got into that last break a little late, so we want to get into our phone call right away. Christine, you're on with Robert Saldin. Hi.
Well, I just wanted to put in my 2 cents. I can answer why the country's more divided. It seems more divided
go
down
for
there.
It. Go for it.
Progressivism. The big governments in both parties, the people who are trying to rule from the federal government level. So there is no opportunity to, before when it was we were under proper constitutional structure, if you didn't like the politics in one state, you could move. Now everything is ruled from the federal government down, and so people feel like they're fighting for their very values because there's no relief. You know, there's no way to get away from the next big law that's coming down from the top.
All right. So where do you think that philosophy that you say the federal government is forcing upon us, where did that philosophy come from?
Progressivism.
Okay.
Because the whole idea is that you can be the big government, the big monster in charge, and we just drift from one party to the other, imposing their values on the other half of the country from the federal government level. And people literally feel like they're fighting for their own freedom and their own survival because they have no recourse.
Okay,
There's this giant monster in Washington that is going to rule you like a king, and there's nothing you can do about it. So there's a greater feel that you have to struggle for your own survival.
Well, tell you what,
if the other party wins, you're going to lose your freedom.
Thanks for your call, Christine.
Christine, thanks. Unfortunately, I want to give Robert time to, he's smiling. He wants to jump in on that and grab a hold of it. But unfortunately, we have to take a quick time out for the top of the hour news, and we will address her concerns when we come back.
More monsters after the break.
Yes, absolutely. 721-1290 is our number, 1-800-56. Well, it's almost Halloween. What do you want? 721-1290 or 1-800-568-5309. Blah, blah. All right. We're coming right back after this quick time out for top of the hour news. Okay, we're back. We're talking politics here. Now, we just had a very impassioned call from Christine before the top of the hour, talking about progressivism, and she sees that as the reason why people feel so disenfranchised. No matter where they move in America, it seems they can't escape this wave of progressivism that's trying to force itself in. I believe I'm speaking what she said.
You missed the word monster.
Well, that was progressivism, the monster that is trying to eat us all up. So if you could respond to that, please.
Yeah, well, I think Christine speaks to, one of the most powerful strains within American political thought over our entire country's history. This concern with government getting too big, and we don't want that. We're individuals. We want to take care of ourselves, and not be forced to do things by the government. And Christine also sees that clearly as something that's increased over time, and I think there's really good reason for that. I mean, obviously the federal government is doing a lot more now than it used to. She also seemed to suggest that both parties were wrapped up in this, right? A lot of Republicans would say exactly what Christine said, but say, well, it's the Democrats that are doing it. We're the good guys. So that's a reason why a lot of people are Republicans. Christine seems to see that as being a piece of both major parties.
I after our discussions with Christine, I know her to be more libertarian than maybe what you'd consider a traditional Republican. I think she's declared on our show in the past that she's a big Ted Cruz supporter. So I think that's part of that wing of the Republican Party that wants a shift of power structure away from the center.
Right, and this is one of the fascinating things within the Republican Party right now. You look at the Democratic Party right now; it's fairly cohesive, a lot of agreement. I would say you look at the Republican Party; it's kind of a mess, and we see this playing out in the presidential nomination.
But it's a beautiful mess.
I mean, I guess one of the things that is interesting to me, watching the balance of power between these two parties, you see this unity in the Democrats, but a failure, it seems to me, to achieve much in the last 10 years. And I'm not talking about through their positions of power, but I mean through the elections process. We have, 98 partisan House and Senate seats in various states across the nation. More than 2/3 of them are controlled by Republicans now. That wasn't the way. That wasn't like it when President Obama took office. Of course, we know the U.S. House and the U.S. Senate both shifted power. Despite all these divisions, which have been gone, they've been concurrent with this change of power. And I wanted to ask you a question, because I know you wrote on this issue back in 2005. I was looking through your writings before the show. You wrote about how to judge the power of the two parties. Which party is more powerful now?
Well, I think right now, if you look at it, the Republicans are more powerful, right? The presidency is obviously a very important position. Democrats hold that, but Republicans hold Congress, as we know. But really where a lot of the action is farther down. You look at state legislatures. You look at governor's mansions. These are largely controlled by Republicans. And if you're a Democrat out there, one reason to be concerned is that there's a little bit of a short bench there. Republicans have a much deeper reservoir right now of elected officials lower down, at the state level, at the local level. They've done very well. Now, to some degree, this is not a huge surprise. When you have the White House held by a Democrat, it tends to be tough for Democrats in Congress and farther down. And so there's kind of this natural movement back towards the other parties, and same when there's a Republican in the White House, right? We saw this at the end of the George W. Bush administration. So there's kind of a natural thing going on.
There is this. I'm curious because I don't think a lot of people know how odd man out the Democrats are when it comes to the state and local politics. But of the 50 legislatures across the United States, Peter, how many do you think are in complete control of one party, that being the Democrats, or the other party, the Republicans? How many Democratic House, Senate, and governorships do you think are in all locked down by one party?
I'll say 40.
What do you think?
I think it's lower than that.
It is much lower than that. How many do you think just the Democrats have?
Just the Democrats have very few. I don't know. Six? 5 or 6?
You're very close. I think it's just 7 now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the Republicans are up to 15 or 16.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, right. So not that many. Most of us like a divided government. We like the two-party system, most of us.
Okay, we're up against a break here. So 721-1290 is our number. You want to give away the beer?
Okay, this is actually a really special giveaway.
Okay.
I've got 2 tickets. They're each of them are worth $50. Pretty good deal. It's not just a beer; it's the Beer and Wine Festival, which is this Friday. My wife went to it last year. There's hors d'oeuvres, lots of people to talk with. Really good time she had with her friend. My dad sat at home watching the kids and totally missed out.
You can really be schmoozing with the
Dad is not missing out this year. We have the grandparents in town, so we're both going.
Okay.
Maybe I'll see you there. Right. What you have to do to win is call 721-1290 and answer this question. If the primary were held tomorrow, who would you vote for and why?
For president.
For the primary. Yeah, for president, to win the primary.
All right. So 721-1290, we're going to get as many. Well, are you going to take the first caller or caller number 4? Anyway.
No, I'm taking a certain number caller, but I'm not telling you who.
We're going to keep everybody guessing here, ladies and gentlemen. So we'll take a quick break. When we come right back, stay with us, and we'll have more of Talk Back. Hey, thanks for joining us on this Wednesday edition of Talk Back. Still very foggy in our part of town anyway, but not in our studio. It's crystal clear in here.
That's right.
That's John King. I'm Peter Christian. Dr. Robert Saldin joining us from the University of Montana Political Science Department.
And I thought it would be an interesting way to get a taste of what the public's thinking right now, to just ask this simple question. Here's how it's going to work. I have decided ahead of time by picking a number who's going to win. Actually, whoever agrees with me and my primary vote will be the winner. Just joking. But you won't know if you've won or not until after you've answered these two questions.
Okay.
The questions are, if the primary were to be held tomorrow for the presidency, if the primary were held tomorrow, who would you vote for and why? So that's it.
Those are your two questions. So, Sue, you're up first. Hi.
Hi.
So who would you vote for and why?
If the primary was tomorrow, I'd vote for Donald Trump.
You would skip ballots?
I'd vote for Donald Trump because I think that he would be the easiest person for the Democrats to beat in the general election.
I think you're absolutely right on that. But, as a Democrat, he has been a Democrat recently. He's also a big eminent domain guy, and Missoulians like that. Especially Missoula Democrats.
I never thought and this isn't even why I called, but you kind of changed it up a little bit. But, what he says about 9/11, he said in his book in 2000 that Osama bin Laden was one of the most wanted terrorists in the world. And he was right about that. And so all this stuff that's going on about Jeb Bush saying that his brother kept us safe, not really. So I have to agree with him about that.
Well, sure. So does Chris Matthews and most of the Democrats. It's a Democratic talking point and has been for 12 years.
Well, I didn't know that it was a Democratic talking point. I've just been listening to the news and reading a little bit lately, and I kind of think that what he said about that was true. So I don't know that we don't have cable, so I don't see any of that stuff.
Sure.
But anyway, so.
Well, thanks for your call, Sue. You're not the right number.
Oh, sure, John.
And Donald Trump is definitely not the right candidate.
Thanks, Sue. Have a good one. All right. Wow, you're so mean. Catherine, go ahead. But we have a line open, by the way, if you want to call, because you may be the right number. Who knows? Catherine, you're on Talkback. Hi. Whoops. Hello, Catherine. Catherine went bye-bye. Okay, well, let's get Mike on the line. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning.
How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Okay, tell us, if you would, please, if the primary were held tomorrow, who would you vote for and why?
I think a good candidate would be Carly Fiorina. I've listened to her talk, and she's very organized in her thoughts. She doesn't seem to use notes or anything, and she talks that's where it's coming from. I think she's be very good.
Well, she's obviously very intelligent. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, in case you missed this, John, Mike,
Carly Fiorina.
Carly Fiorina, and the reason is that she's very intelligent and very organized, right?
Yes.
Okay. So,
all right. Thanks. That's not the right number, but thanks for the answer.
Okay. All right. So let's get Jim on the line. Jim, you're on Talkback. Hi.
Good morning. I'd like to ask the question, does he know where the Progressive Party came from and what their origins are?
Oh, you want to ask Professor Saldin?
Yes.
Okay, so the question to you, repeat the question, please, Jim.
Do you know where the Progressive Party came from and their what formed them?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I mean, typically when we talk about the progressivism and the progressives, we aren't talking about a specific party, although there was a progressive party for a time. But the progressives originated early 1900s. It was a movement. It was an ideological movement. It was not necessarily lined up along partisan lines. You had Democratic progressives and you had Republican progressives. Teddy Roosevelt, a Republican, was among those. Woodrow Wilson, a Democrat, prominently among those. And so it was more of an intellectual and ideological movement than an actual partisan movement.
So what was the thing that made them progressive?
Well, I think this idea of progress, the idea that that we are progressing towards a more enlightened society, and part of the job of government was to push us farther along those lines and
so
overcome.
Is it like a Hegelian philosophy applied to government?
You know, I think part of it was this idea that we can overcome some of these traditional barriers that are holding us back. And there are a number of things. The way the party system worked at the time, right? That was one of the barriers. The Constitution of the United States, to some degree, was a barrier. So the progressives wanted to grease the wheels of government, make it easier to get things done. You know, one of the things about our system is it's set up in a way that prevents things from being done quickly, right? Like it, don't like it. That is the way our system is set up. The progressives wanted to break down some of those barriers, make it easier for the president and Congress to work together, and to again kind of push us in this more progressive direction that they saw as very natural and inevitable. But part of the goal of the political class was to hurry up and get us to that good endpoint quicker.
You just said something I don't think I could get a regular progressive to say, that they would see the Constitution as a barrier to progress and something they need to break down. But you know, for those that aren't progressives, like myself, that seems pretty obvious.
I was talking more about the original.
Hold on, just a second, caller.
Put your headphones back on.
He couldn't hear you.
Go ahead, Jim.
When did the American Communist Party hijack the progressive name?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that one, Jim. You know, what I would say is that you know, I think the progressive movement in the United States has been around for a long time. It's a legitimate part of political discourse in the United States. The term progressive went away for a long time. It kind of became a dirty word. Now it's kind of back. You have people on the left now using that word more, and so we're kind of having a revival
herself
of,
as a new
of progressivism.
In my book, that is a communist.
All right. Well, Jim, let me ask you now. The two questions are: if the primary were held today, who would you vote for and why?
Ted Cruz.
Ted Cruz, why?
His policies on immigration, economy, and national defense.
All right.
Thanks for your call,
Jim.
Not our winner. We're getting very close, though.
All right. Let's get Merle on. Merle, good morning. Thanks for holding. You're on Talkback. Hi.
Morning.
So if the primary were held today...
Yeah, my pick would be Carly Fiorina.
That's two Carlys. Carly's winning in our straw poll here.
Okay, all right. And why?
That's because I think she's really intelligent, and she's got a lot of international experience. So I think she could deal well with other foreign leaders. And I'd love to see her and Hillary in a debate.
Well, now, let me ask you this. If Carly Fiorina had to sit down across the table from Vladimir Putin and decide, important issues, do you think she would have, if you will, the gravitas to be able to deal with a major world leader like a Putin?
Oh, yeah. I don't think she'd have... I don't see her backing down from anybody. That's one of the other things I like about her is, she doesn't back down from any fight. I think she'd sit right with him and go toe-to-nail.
Toe-to-nail.
All right, Merle. Thanks for the call, man.
All right, thank you. Bye.
Appreciate it. Now we're
not our winner.
We're up against a break. We have Dave and Catherine yet, and one line open. You're teasing them.
Oh, no, it's very, very close. I'll tell you that.
Okay, we're going to come right back after this. One line open, by the way, 721-1290. All right, we're back on Talkback. Before we get into our discussion, Bulls Eyewear, the commercial reminded me, hey, when you're driving, if you don't have a good pair of sunglasses, you're toast, okay? I got some really cool sunglasses from Bulls Eyewear and wore them all the way over to Seattle and back. and driving was fantastic. It was great. They're wonderful people over there, so I encourage you. I personally recommend that you go see them, okay? So there you go. Now, where were we?
We're at Dave.
All right, let's get Dave on the line. Good morning, Dave. How are you?
Yeah, good morning. As far as progressives go, I mean, you can point your finger at anyone, and blame them. I can point my finger at free traders and blame, but, when you point a finger at someone, there's 4 fingers pointing back at you. And as far as big government, a lot of people, mostly Republicans, want to spend a lot more money on defense. And there's a lot of people, mostly Democrats, who want to spend more money on the poor. And then when you get down to it, there are a lot of people in this country who want to protect children from guns. So they want to pass a lot of laws to protect children from guns. And there's some people out there who want to pass a lot of laws to protect unborn children from abortions. So, if you want to blame someone, look in the mirror.
Hey, so do you want to try for the tickets?
No, thank you.
Oh, man, I was open to hear his,
All right,
his
thanks,
vote
Dave.
there.
All right, Catherine, you're on Talkback. Hi.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
All right, good morning. So, questions. What do you think Trump's chances are to get the Republican nomination? That's number one. Number two, do you think Joe Biden will jump in, as he is probably planning to do within the next 2 weeks, and displace Hillary, and will that increase the possibility that the Democrats will hold the executive office? And number three is about Canada, because Canada just flipped back to the Liberal side by a large margin with Trudeau, and what does that bode, if anything, for the U.S. elections? And by the way, Harper has said he will step down as Prime Minister.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
I think on Trump, I tell you, everyone's been assuming that he would flame out. Byron York had a piece that's gotten a lot of attention a couple days ago, saying that the Republican establishment is now in panic mode, and I think there's some reason for them to be concerned. This guy does have some staying power. The latest polls, as Trump will be the first one to tell you, show him back. I mean, I think there was, after that second debate, there was a little bit of a dip. I think people thought, okay, now finally he's fallen off. Well, he seems to have rebounded. So I think it's less implausible than a lot of us thought it would be that Trump would be the nominee.
Yeah, so here's the thing that I found was really interesting. There was a poll done recently, I think it was Washington Times USA poll. It actually just came out yesterday. And they asked, the more you hear of such and such candidate, do you like them or like them less? And Trump had the highest for the more I hear of him, the more I dislike him, which I think might go towards some of the polling, when you see him in the debates. And as the numbers dwindle down, I think you are going to hear more of him and find more that you're disagreement with. Because frankly, the guy's all over the board on every issue multiple times in the same speech oftentimes. So I think that's going to be something that prevents him from winning.
Yeah, I mean, I think the curious thing about Donald Trump is that he's breaking all the rules.
Yeah.
And we are in some uncharted territory. I mean, like one of the things, one of the assumptions of the Republican establishment is that the voters out there will eventually figure out that Donald Trump is not a conservative. And which I think is absolutely true. And when voters figure that out, they're going to flee. Well, that assumes that all the voters out there really care about conservative principles in the same way that the Washington people do, and that's I think an open question, and a more open question than it's ever been.
And I think also you get this interesting bias when you talk to people about issues like this, because if you're talking to a Democrat, they assume that the Republicans are dumb, and the Republicans assume that their voters are smart. So, and obviously we're a mixed bag in both parties, right?
Right. And I think just it's a fascinating time to be watching American politics. I mean, the Trump phenomenon is just unprecedented, and who knows, this time might be different. He's breaking all the rules, having success at it, and it'll be fascinating to see how it turns out.
What about Joe Biden getting in the race? That was her second question.
I mean, I've thought for the last several weeks it was imminent. It was pretty clear that he was going to run. I think, I'm surprised he's waited this long. I think every day it seems like, well, today has to be the day. But his comments yesterday were clearly directed at Hillary Clinton.
The enemy comments I played at the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a new opening. We're maybe seeing, assuming he does get in, that is going to be one of the ways in which he distinguishes himself, and it's a good fit for his whole career.
So a lot of people think that his decision is going to be based on insider information about whether or not Hillary's going to get indicted. Do you think that is that true?
Man.
I'm a little skeptical. I don't think Joe Biden has some inside read on that.
He is the vice president. It's his administration that's preventing some of the stuff from coming out.
Yeah. I'm skeptical.
Okay.
If it was so clear that Hillary was going to be indicted, why didn't he get in? A month ago?
Well, that's the thing. It's not clear.
Mm-hmm.
I think the question is whether or not they can keep the information.
Well, tell you what, Catherine, are you still with us?
Yes.
Okay.
I am.
Are you going to answer our questions as to who you'd vote for and why?
Okay. This a couple of tickets are riding on this.
Yes, that's true.
Okay. Well, I know already what, or at least John and I have discussed before.
Oh, don't go with what I want. It's the number. It's really not what I would vote for in the primary.
All right.
Go with what you think.
What I think is, considering the fact that the establishment Republicans are shooting their bullets, if you will, at Donald Trump and to a lesser extent at Carson and Carla Fiorina, because they are all outsiders, so to speak, and Ted Cruz has no chance whatsoever, which is a shame because he's a very principled conservative. I personally do not know who I will support. It depends on who is still standing.
If it was tomorrow.
Donald Trump. Oh. The reason being...
I always thought you were so smart, Catherine.
I know. You and I have discussed this. I know that you hate the guy with a white-hot passion.
Why would you vote for a Democrat in sheep's clothing here?
I have read some of his books over the years, and he's a very intelligent, very smart businessman. There are a lot of things I do not agree with him on. However, I like the fact that he is coming from the outside. I like the fact that he is more of a mainstream business guy than a Wall Street business guy because he is in real estate. I like the fact that he pushes back because a lot of them do not. A lot of the candidates for the last 20-some-odd years do not push back, do not, get in there and fight dirty. He does.
Yeah, bloody, as I think a good characterization for the way that Donald Trump
We're up against a break, so John?
Not quite yet.
All right, so thanks for the call, Catherine. Now we know about you. No, I'm just kidding. Tyler and Tom are both waiting. We have one line open, 721-1290. John is teasing us here. We want to know who you would vote for if the primary was tomorrow and why. We'll be right back. Okay, we're back on Talkback 721-1290. We still haven't given away the beer. I'm sorry, the beer and wine.
It's a whole dinner night. So you got hors d'oeuvres. I guess it's not a dinner. It's hors d'oeuvres, beer and wine, all kinds of fancy stuff and fancy people.
We have all three lines. Are you ready to go?
I'm ready to go.
All right, let's get this going. Tyler, you're on Talkback. Hi, you may be the one, sir. So if the primary were held tomorrow,
I doubt it unless I can guess the correct answer that.
Nope, it's not a correct answer. Trust me, Catherine knows the correct answer because we debated this for like 45 minutes. But go ahead.
My answer for the Republican side is Ben Carson.
And why?
I like him. He's sensible. He's anti-PC, and he seems to even though he kicks the bear when he does it, he says the right thing. He's right on guns. He's right on immigration, in my opinion. Unlike Trump, who wants to literally send everybody home and then let them come back and stay forever. That's an amnesty plan. I don't care how you count your chickens. Trump wants amnesty. They just have to go home, tag home, and then come back, and they can stay forever. So Trump's out in my book.
All right. Well, Tyler, guess what?
What?
You are the winner. And you did not answer the same way John would have. So,
man,
congratulations.
Man.
So, Tyler, stay on the line, okay?
Don't go away. Don't go away. All right, let's continue on though. Line one. Tyler's on line one. Tom, you're on Talkback. Hi.
Oh man!
Sorry about that, buddy.
Tyler, you stole my thunder.
Okay, well, why don't you tell us who you would vote for and why?
I
Well, this is kind of a two-parter. I'd vote for Ben Carson because I think he's really level-headed.
I don't understand. I love Ben Carson. I think he's a wonderful, very moral guy. But I'm trying to imagine either Donald Trump or Carly Fiorina or Ben Carson actually in the White House trying to govern. I find it really hard to see that happening, and maybe that's just a lack on my own imagination.
I really want to ask Robert about this outsider thing. I don't know. Maybe I'm too conservative for this viewpoint, but it seems to me this desire for an outsider is dangerous in many ways. What are your thoughts? Do you think this is this a new thing? Is it different or?
Yeah, I mean, I think I tend to agree and be skeptical about how these people would actually function as president. There's more to being president than just being anti-PC. As refreshing as that might be at times, these so-called outsider candidates, Fiorina, Trump, Carson, they have very weak ties to the Republican Party. And they don't have any backing in the party. These are just kind of cults of personality.
And here's the thing that really gets me as somebody that used to do speeches for a living, right? I used to do debates and public speaking and all this jazz. You could say anything, but until you have to go and vote for something, no one really knows what you would do. You haven't had to put your medal
Well, yeah, Donald
down
Trump
on the line.
Donald Trump has never voted, for a bill.
Sure.
Neither has Ben Carson. Neither has Carly Fiorina.
So I almost feel like you're throwing a football in the dark and hoping that someone can make a touchdown.
No, I don't think.
Yeah,
that's true at all.
We're hoping that there's going to be some white knight to ride in and save us. It's something that I think is not new. We've often hoped for this. But it is, John, as you say, I think it's arguably dangerous. The founders certainly worried about this. The threat of demagoguery. It's one of the great persistent challenges of a democratic system, of life in a democracy. That we are prone to these people who come in and flatter us. They tell us what we want to hear, but they aren't accountable to any larger program, and that's what the party system offers, and that's why I tend to think that we want as candidates people who are linked up with one of the major parties. It holds them accountable to a broader to a broader platform and a broader agenda and a broader ideology.
Now the caller disagrees with us. Do we have time for him to give his response?
Yeah, I do. Because here's what I see. I guess I see these three top candidates. Actually, we'll call it four. So we've got Donald Trump, Ben Carson, Ted Cruz, Carly Fiorina. They are calling out the establishment, and basically what they're doing, so they're forcing the establishment, the Republican establishment, to show their true colors, and I believe they're showing them to be a Republican progressive party. Mm-hmm. And people don't want that. True conservatives don't want that, and that's where the Republican Party, I think they get it, I just don't think they like it.
All right. Hey, thanks for the call, sir. Appreciate that. All right, we're going to take a little break. Mike, we're going to get you on here in a moment, and whoever is on line one, 721-1290 is our number, 1-800-568-5309. Coming right back. Okay, we're back on Talkback. 721-1290 is our number. I just totally forgot the fact that Tyler has been waiting. And Tyler, you actually had a question for Professor Saldin. Go ahead.
So thanks for letting me back on.
You bet.
My question is on the Democrat side. You got Hillary Clinton, who, in my mind, is going to face criminal charges before the election. She'll be taken out of the election, if not granted a pardon by the President of the United States.
It's not going to happen.
What, the pardon or the charges?
She's not going to be charged.
Okay, I'll take that bet.
I'll tell you what, I think she's going to escape. I really do.
The only way she can escape this is with a presidential pardon.
Well, she hasn't been really charged with anything yet.
Yet?
She hasn't even been indicted yet.
Look, listen. If I were to tell you, I need you to turn over all your emails to me by Friday, and you said, okay, since you're in charge of me, I'll go ahead and do it. How would you do it? Would you print them out on paper, or would you zip them over to an external hard drive and turn over the electronic copy?
I would hit
There's
Control Alt Delete
There-
because I don't
there is
trust
a-
random guy on the radio.
There's a reason why the Hillary Clinton or the State Department. I mean, look, yesterday they just released Ambassador Stevens' emails to the Benghazi committee. Not one investigation has ever requested his emails. And what did they do? They printed over 10,000 emails or pages of emails. They printed them. There's a reason why they're doing it this way. Is to slow things down. They have to slow things down because there's a process in which a person gets indicted. And if we can take it long enough, she might make it through the campaign long enough to actually make it to the campaign without being charged.
So what's your question for Professor Saldin?
My question is, who is going to run on the Democrat side? Because you got Biden. He's got issues. He's a molester.
He's not
Look at
in
the way
yet.
he looks at these people on stage. He's talked to.
Are you talking about his back rub tendency? Is that what?
Yes. I mean, he's a creepo.
A little bit too much touchy-feely guy.
I think most Americans think of him as quirky and odd, but
he's
lovable.
He's Grandpa Joe.
He's a creepo. Okay, now, if you take it one step farther, then you got what? Bernie Sanders? Okay, he's a socialist. Whatever. He might run. He might stay in. He might go independent. Who cares? He's independent already, but he's running as a Democrat. It doesn't matter. Who's left? Michelle freaking Obama.
Wow. Oh, what's her name from Harvard or
Elizabeth
Yeah,
Warren.
Elizabeth Warren would
Elizabeth
likely
Warren,
jump
yeah,
in,
yeah,
I
yeah.
think.
Well,
If it got to that.
Name recognition. I'm telling you, Michelle's going to get in.
If you're a Democrat, a lot of people know Elizabeth
All
Warren.
right. Well, yeah. I'll tell you what. Let's let
Thanks.
Professor Saldin address that. So, what do you think? So, with all that Tyler put out there, it's a lot to consume. So, what do you think?
Yeah, thanks, Tyler. I'm really skeptical of the premise. I'm just doubtful that Hillary Clinton's gonna
she's gonna skate,
gonna take a fall for this. I don't think this will be the end of Hillary Clinton. But that being said, if for whatever reason Hillary Clinton were to fall by the wayside, I mean, I think Biden's the obvious one, and I think, John, you're exactly right. I mean, Biden is a gaffe machine, but there's also something really endearing about that, and he's someone who I think people like.
Unless of course you're Dan Quayle.
By the way, he's a gaffe machine like Trump. Trump is a gaffe machine, but people still like him because he doesn't back away from his stupid things that he says, and neither does Biden really. He has 2 shotguns one day, the next day he says stand up, and you don't have any. You're in a wheelchair. I mean, he does really not smart things in public, and people are like, oh shucks.
Yeah, and I mean, on the Trump gaffe machine, it's totally true. Trump doesn't. He doesn't. This is another area where he doesn't play by the rules, right? Normally, when you commit some gaffe, you're supposed to apologize and look like you've been shamed and something.
Give a big donation to whatever societies.
Right.
Yeah,
He totally doubles down and says, "Screw you." I'm sticking to my guns.
Yeah.
And we see Carson doing this too, right? Same playbook. And Biden to some degree does that as well.
Sure.
Okay, we got to get one 60-second timeout. We have Mike, Walt, and Alan who all want to get in on the conversation, even though we've given away the stuff, which is great.
People like to talk on talk radio. It's
Imagine
crazy.
that. It's a talk show. So we're going to come right back and talk with Mike, Walt, and Alan in just a moment. Oh, yeah. 721-1290 is the number. It's John King over there. And, of course, we have Professor Robert Saldin joining us from the Political Science Department. Go ahead. Quick, John.
A lot of questions on Facebook. I'll try to get through them quick. Starting with Jeannie. She says, Christine said that federal-level progressive policies are influencing the local-level government entities so that we can never get away from this just by moving to another city. I agree with Christine. It feels like this is what's happening in Missoula. Our city council is an example. It feels like a coup is going on. David says or asks, when and why was an actual physical filibuster done away with? ?
Yeah, good question. I mean, there have been those old classic Mr. Smith Goes to Washington style filibusters. We don't see them much anymore, although I do recall Ted Cruz mounting something like that.
Didn't Rand Paul try
and
something?
Rand Paul.
Right.
That's right. So we actually have had a couple of those recently. But basically, the reason we don't see them more and that they're kind of staged in a way is that basically the threat of a filibuster is sufficient to shut it down, and the leadership just says, well, in the interests of moving on to other business, we'll acknowledge that a filibuster is in effect going on, and so the people don't actually have to stand there like Strom Thurmond in the most classic one, probably over some civil rights legislation.
Sure. I think that they really hurt things, though, when we don't get to watch senators have to pee themselves on stage. I think something is missing in American politics.
Okay, so let's move on to our callers. Mike, you're up first. Go ahead quickly. What's up?
Yeah, well, they say Donald Trump, and the reason is he's the only one that has any experience out of this group running that governs anything. And if you don't think he's governed, try governing a $10 billion industry and tell me you're going to govern.
Okay.
And by the way, Hillary will skate. I'll take that bet on anybody who wants to bet she's going to have an indictment of anything. I'll take that bet any day of the week.
All right,
so I'll let you go.
Thanks, Mike.
Question. This is from Will, former chair of the Republican Party in Montana, actually. Will Dayshaw says, someone has to speak for the Republican Party. We are consistently blamed by scholars and left-leaning blogs. We are out of control, unable to be cohesive, etc. Please explain how we are able to continually win elections. We are a big tent party, and that should bode well for us. This is something I actually brought up earlier on in the show. If they're so divisive, so much infighting, why do they keep winning?
Yeah, well, I think the Republican Party has a lot to offer the American public. I mean, most American or a plurality of Americans actually identify as being conservative. So it's not a surprise that the Conservative Party does well. And I think it's also the case that it's not necessarily such a terrible thing to have this fight over the soul of the party going on. It is, as we were talking about earlier, it's much more divisive, I think, than what you see on the Democratic side. But it also means that the Republican Party has something to offer a lot of people. But you know, right now we do see this fight going on. You have people on the libertarian side who are represented, people like Mike Huckabee representing the religious right. You have the kind of the quote unquote establishment types, the neoconservatives, the kind of what you might call Burkean paleo conservatives. All of these people don't necessarily agree on a whole lot.
Who's a Burkean paleo conservative?
Well, people like a Pat Buchanan type is frequently called a paleo conservative. I'm not sure how Burkean he is exactly, but a paleo conservative, right? So these people don't agree on first principles,
right?
But they are at the very least brought together by a disdain for liberalism or progressivism in the Democratic Party.
Okay, let's move on. And Walt, you're on Talkback. Go ahead.
Well, good morning. Anyway, I'll announce who I'm in support of.
All right.
But first, I want to ask the professor a question, and his answer will probably lead to why I take my position on who I would support.
Okay.
What is the most sorely lacking quality in the president and the administration of the United States these days?
Thanks, Walt. And you know, gosh, you might have stumped me, Walt.
Is it courage?
The word start.
I wouldn't say that. Look, to play off of something we were talking about earlier, this the polarization. I mean, I think one thing that Obama has frequently faulted for, and correctly so, and one of the things that gives rise to a Biden candidacy is that Obama has not been good about cultivating relationships with members of Congress. This really is something that's important in terms of greasing the wheels, getting things done in terms of moving legislation. He's often kicked that off to Joe Biden.
Right. Go ahead, Walt.
Yeah, well, the word you've kind of beat around it, what I'm looking for is leadership. And Trump, as Mike alluded to, is Trump would have the best leadership ability and capability that's presently existing in any of all the candidates, and including the present administration. We have such a leadership vacuum going on. This is just my opinion, my perspective, but it's evident.
Robert has his hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, Walt, I mean, I think I'm sympathetic to that to a degree, but a lot of people assume that just because you've been successful in business means you can get back to Washington as president, and the same thing will happen. Well, our political system doesn't work like a business.
You can't fire them.
You can't fire people. you can't compel Congress to do what you want. I mean, you can call them names and you can try to use the bully pulpit and all these things. But at the end of the day, if you can't bring Congress, you aren't going to get anything done.
There is one very important skill that I think a business leader would do well at bringing to the federal government level, and that is the process of appointments and of picking your team. If you're good at building a team in the business world, I think you could be good at building a team at the White House. It's one of the biggest failures, I think, in the Obama administration was in building a good team.
Real quickly, Walt, I want you to wrap it up real quick.
Okay, well, no, that's good. Thank you.
Thanks for the call. Alan, you have 1 minute. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to talk about the divide that's in this country.
Okay.
At the D.C. level, there is not two parties. There is a Democrat-Republican party that thinks and operates the same. And this is why the grassroots out here has fallen for Trump, Carlia, and Carson, because the leadership in Washington, D.C. is not listening to the grassroots people. And although I'm not for Trump, I'm not for Carlia, I could support Ben Carson, but my candidate would be Ted Cruz. But this is because we don't feel we are actually having any representation in Washington, D.C.
Thanks, Alan.
All right. Thanks, Alan. So we have, go ahead.
I wanted to correct something I said earlier. I said Republicans held only 16 trifectas or something like that. They actually hold 24. So it's 24-7, which is bigger than I even thought
Sounds
it
like
was.
a good football score for Saturday. So now, real quickly, we have like about 30 seconds. If folks want to get more information about you, Robert, how can they find out more and read what you've done?
Shoot me an email, robert.saldin@umontana.edu. Or visit the University of Montana website. Go to Political Science. Under People, you can find me.
There you are. All right. So what's coming up on tomorrow's show?
Tomorrow we have Missoula Superintendent Mark Thane
that's
on the radio.
Going to be a good one.
Should be fun.
All right. 721-1290 is our number. We appreciate everyone who called today. You made it a very rich, energetic discussion. You guys were awesome. We appreciate it. And you guys have a great day. Don't forget to turn your lights off when you're driving through the fog.